bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
JCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. I'm Claire Heddles. In a challenge to Florida's restrictive parental rights and education law, a Palm Beach County rabbi wants to ban the Bible in district schools. Wilkin Brutus has this report.
Citing references to slavery and implied violence against gay people and women, Barry Silver wants to bar instruction on the Christian Holy Text in Palm Beach County schools. He tells WLRN he's testing criteria outlined by the state that allows parents to challenge book offerings in public schools. Attorney Silver is a rabbi for the Jewish congregation Lador Vador.
We're challenging this to make a point. We don't want to ban books, but if you're going to do it, then do it in an even-handed way. Don't just get rid of books that you don't like.
Palm Beach County school officials have reviewed dozens of titles to ensure classrooms were not running afoul of the 2022 Florida law. The measure widely prevents classroom instruction on critical race theory, gender identity, and sexual orientation.
Slavery was justified by the Bible, the oppression of women. All of these wrongs were brought about by people who literally interpreted the Bible.
The district is closed for the summer. Silver said he's going to bring the matter to the school board at its regular meeting next month. I'm Wilkin Brutus in Palm Beach County.
Jacksonville's historic Friendship Fountain on the South Bank is closing in on completion of an updated fountain and park. But city officials say the opening of the project's first phase won't happen this summer as planned. As contractors smooth out dirt around new gazebos, shading park benches underneath, city officials say the $6 million upgrade of the South Bank Riverwalk landmark still needs landscaping, restrooms, and other tweaks. They're now looking at this fall, with other amenities to be done in 2024. Partly sunny, hot, and breezy today. This is WJCT News.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the Friday Media Roundtable are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
More questions arise about health care at the Duval County Jail. That's after an inmate didn't get medication and then died a few days after his release. The Jaguars continue their series of community huddles to try to rally community support for that stadium of the future. And as you, I'm sure, heard, Mayor-elect Donna Deegan announce some very key staff picks this week. All that and more just ahead with our roundtable. Good morning and live with you from Studio 2. I'm Dan Scanlon, and this is First Coast Connect, and thanks for listening. Just ahead, all the top stories of the week with our Friday roundtable, and we want your input, so give us a call at 549-2937. That's 549-2937. Then later, a live performance by the Jacksonville Gospel Chorale. But first this hour, it's Friday, and here to round up all the week's news, we welcome a truly, and I'm not joking here, stellar group of brains. Andrew Pantazzi from the Tributary.
Happy to be back here with you, Dan.
It's great to have you in person with me. Ann Schindler, First Coast News.
Glad to be here, Dan.
David Barline of the Florida Times-Union.
Good morning, everybody.
And regular contributor Jack Webb.
Dan, thanks for having me back.
All the time. Listen live on the radio or watch our video stream right now on Facebook and YouTube. Call us at 549-2937. Tweet us at FCC Con Air. That's the show's new handle. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. That's FCC On Air. I've been corrected. Sorry. And message us at First Coast Connect's Facebook page. So let's begin with our top story. Well, we've all been involved in this story, especially when the attorney for the family was here and dropped some bombshells last week. But this question's about Armor Correctional Health Services, which is contracted to run Duval County's jail's health care. And they continue to mount after Dexter Barry, a heart transplant recipient, died last November after he didn't get his anti-rejection medication while in jail. I'm sure all of us have seen the video from the backseat of the police car as he told the officer, I need to take these meds 3 times a day. In fact, I didn't get my last one. The officer sounded sympathetic, tried to get his supervisor to come up with some idea, but apparently Mr. Barry ends up in jail, does not get his meds. By the time he's out, the meds apparently arrive at the jail, and then he unfortunately passes away. So Andrew Pantazzi, the tributary staff, obviously did a lot of work on this. I've done some research, but not a lot. Certainly, we are aware that Tony Baselli, former Jaguar, is an active lobbyist with them. The big question that came from the attorney and others for the family is, why didn't the jail staff, the armor folks, just send them to a hospital and take it away from their hands and their problems? So take it away.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of things we're looking into, and my coworker Nicole Manna at the Tributary has been digging in deeper and deeper into some of the problems with Armor Correctional and the medical care at the jail. But lately what we've been trying to show is how much JSO should have already known about Armor Correctional before they ever privatized their medical care in 2017. In 2017, after then Sheriff Mike Williams had taken over, Mike Bruno as corrections director, they signed a deal to privatize away the medical care and hire this outside group, Armor Correctional, who had hired Tony Baselli as their lobbyist. Already, Armor had developed a reputation for its poor care across the country. And when they re-signed that contract last October under interim Sheriff Pat Ivey, at that point, they'd been criminally convicted in another state. They had been removed by most sheriffs in Florida who had initially hired them because of the poor care in their counties, and because many of those sheriffs, including our neighboring Baker sheriff, said they were lying to them, they were misleading, they were withholding information from sheriffs, and they were doing the bare minimal amount of care they could, and billing as much as possible from taxpayers. Yet, despite all of this being known widely by sheriffs across the state, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office signed a lengthy extension that amounts to more than $90 million total over the course of the contract with Armor Correctional to continue handling the medical care. And now what they've said is that they did order the heart transplant anti-rejection medication for Dexter Berry, but that it would take at least 48 hours plus an extra, I think, 4 to 6 hours. So they're saying at minimum it's going to take 2.5 days to get medication that these recent transplant recipients need to take 3 times a day. And if you don't take it and you're a recent transplant recipient, your body's going to reject that transplant.
So Friday arrest, Monday release. At that point, with 2.5 days of these without these meds, it's too late no matter what happens.
That's what the cardiologists that we've spoken to have said, is that by that point, it's too late. Your body has already now started to reject this heart that he waited 10 years on a transplant list to get. And, you got to think of how much effort goes into, when Mayo Clinic or any other hospital is doing a heart transplant, and then to go into a jail that's not ready to deal with these specialized medical needs. And for him especially, the other question is why he was even arrested in the first place for something that was so minor as he and a neighbor were arguing over the neighbor not paying for Wi-Fi that Mr. Berry was providing. And he said, I'm going to beat you up using a profanity if you don't pay. But both men were handicapped and elderly. It did not seem like a very legitimate threat. And the police officer arrives and decides he needs to take away Mr. Berry and arrest him on this charge. And that ends up amounting to what seems like a death sentence based on the lack of medication that he received.
And what we hear is that even if his girlfriend had been able to go back in the house and get the meds, the jail policy does not allow you to drop it off because the jail, maybe rightly so, doesn't know what's in that container. But the officer apparently was sympathetic enough to try to talk to the supervisor, and the logic says maybe that officer could have gotten someone to go back to the house with Mr. Berry in the backseat going, it's in this room, and get it. And at worst, there would have been a few hours delay. So let's open this up.
The individual case is like, its own, there's a lot of complexity, right? But the big issue is when you're dealing with privatized, medical care in a prison or a jail, and Armor obviously has contracts across the country and across the state. But they're dealing with a very transient population. They're dealing with a very unhealthy population, and they're trying to cut costs. And one thing that you've seen in other areas around the country is that there's been these short-term issues with Armor administering medicine quickly. And often people are coming in and out of the jail. If they don't have to administer meds immediately, it can be a money-saving thing. And so it's not necessarily that they're making that calculation, but they certainly are every time that they have to decide whether they're going to administer a medicine or not. That person could be gone or discharged or bonded out by the time that they actually receive the medicine that they
dispense. Logically, you have a private medical care contract coming in saying, we can be cheaper than you doing this in-house, and we can be a for-profit company that is serving our shareholders or serving our fiduciary interests while also being cheaper. That means they're cutting costs somewhere. They're providing substandard service somewhere. They're having to find some way to cheapen what's being given, and you're deciding as a city, as a sheriff's office, that you're okay with spending less and potentially getting substandard care.
Well, the jail did actually do its own medical care at one point, and then it contracted and worked with the Department of Health in Florida. But the logic here, I'm being told, is that Armour came in and said, we can save you millions on the contract. And that was the draw. And then with lobbying to show that that savings would allegedly happen. But you're right, with cost savings comes problems with service.
And let me say this, if I can, real quick.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the contract did not save money. Duval County had one of the lowest costs of providing inmate health care in the state by far. When they brought the contractor in, the costs went up.
Yeah, but that's what Armour's promise was to everybody, I'm sure.
Correct. You know, the thing that I see wrong here is that this is a very, I guess, specific prescription. They're not going to have it on a shelf, right? They're going to have to order it. It's going to I can understand why they wouldn't have it readily available, because how many individuals are you going to get be arrested who's just had a heart transplant a week before or 6 months before? So that said, something fell through the cracks. If this is beyond the scope of your capabilities, to your point, Dan, why did someone say, hey, listen, we don't have this. We understand the significance of the health risk. Transport him to Shands.
But yet Mr. Barry's attorney says that since announcing this, he has heard from another former inmate who was a transplantee. Correct. So this is obviously something that should be in the scope of a subsection of the contract that says if a very specific issue comes in, this is how we handle it.
Exactly.
Because apparently there's a lot of deaths that have occurred in jails. In fact, last Friday, we got an email from JSO about a patient, an inmate, sent to a hospital who then passed away. They call that an in-custody death, even though that apparently that person was sent to be hospitalized.
I mean, you do have to be fair. That is a very unhealthy population. They're 20-year life expectancy less than the average person, and a lot of times people are living in difficult situations when they're incarcerated. They have some addiction issues. The bar is pretty high for like the level of care that would be needed to provide, for this very at-risk population. But the issue of everything when it comes to our carceral system is that we try to do it on the cheap. We want to lock everybody up for crimes, but we do not want to pay for the fact that it's very expensive to house someone and care for someone. And it's, there's enormous costs that are already well beyond healthcare that are safety issues for people who work in these facilities. The guards that work there, it's, there's a lot of ways that we're cutting costs that are making it less safe.
And don't forget that many years ago, a sheriff decided to cut costs by serving only bologna sandwiches at the Duval County Jail. So, and I know they don't do that now, but we have a caller here. We've got Charlie from Jacksonville Beach. Charlie, good morning to you.
Hello, guys. I think I've mentioned this before. We have a new mayor, and we just lost Melissa Ross to the Deegan administration. What we need is committees. If you go to the jail and you have an issue, if you're suffering from depression or diabetes, or if you're a juvenile and you go to the jail, there should be a committee that assigns you an advocate. The advocate would be your personal person who makes sure that the jail is doing their job. And if the jail doesn't do its job, we're very familiar with Donna Deegan and how she worked as a reporter. We're very familiar with Melissa Ross. And if they put me on a committee to oversee this, and they put me on a committee that's supposed to have people down there that assign advocates to juveniles or people like this gentleman who come in who will oversee that he gets his job done or he gets what he needs. They put me on a committee, and the people in the police, the jail aren't doing their job. They're in big trouble.
All right. Thank you for that. Well, don't forget, and we'll talk about this later, there is a new director of public safety in Mayor Deegan's administration. And so we shall see. Andrew, I thought you had a comment, or David.
I was going to say public health is a big part of the Deegan administration's platform. I think Jack's suggestion really seems really common sense, right? Somebody comes into the jail, you don't have the medication for them. They have an issue that requires care faster than you can provide it in the jail setting. I think they do get, that's part of the indigent care contract the city has with Shands, is to provide them funding each year to provide medical care for inmates. It's really baffling why they didn't just say, move the patient over to a facility, other than the hospital wouldn't have the medication any faster. But it just seems like a hospital would have access to that because they do that kind of.
Or the hospital may be able to facilitate delivery of the drug from the spouse to the hospital.
Well, there's no spouse.
Right.
There was a
It just seems-
girlfriend. But again,
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
if you transport the inmate to the hospital, then it's no longer your problem. So that sounds a smart deal for me. And we have Mayo Clinic with a transplant program that's been in place. So I'm sure a simple phone call from UF to Mayo and just a transport drive, and you get it half a day later. I mean, that would be the limit. There were options here, obviously. Any other thoughts? We have another caller here.
Well, I did want to also throw out to what Ann was saying earlier. You know, the sheriff's office is deciding to detain, to incarcerate this person. And I think that does also raise one of the challenges that groups like iCare have been raising of calling for more non-carceral approaches, you know, whether that's more notices to appear, where you are telling someone to appear in court but not necessarily bringing them to the jail, or adult civil citations which avoid the criminal justice system, which Sheriff Waters has said he will not do, and he has vowed not to go down the path of the adult civil citation programs that have been advocated for not only by iCare but also by State Attorney Melissa Nelson.
And many other Florida sheriffs have also gone on the record on video at iCare events saying that they have seen a massive drop in jail population using adult civil citations.
Because if the sheriff's office is going to say we need to arrest all of these people, even if this is a minor alleged offense, we need to bring them to the jail, and then this guy needs medical care, that's now on the city. The city needs to provide that medical care. They can't just say, sorry, this is a really specialized drug that we have a hard time with. For many people, I'm diabetic. I'm type 1 diabetic. 24 hours without insulin, and I'm dead. Like, I can't be in jail and them say, oh, sorry, we couldn't get a hold of your insulin, and therefore, you know, you get a death sentence for some minor misdemeanor offense like Mr. Berry was alleged to have committed.
Actually, I think that is ongoing. There's another case represented by a lawyer out of Orlando where there was a case of a detainee being died because of lack of insulin. So it occurs.
Hey, guys, you're listening to First Coast Connect, and you can give us a yell at 549-2937, or you can tweet us at our brand new handle, FCC, at FCC On Air. So give us a yell, give us a call. We've got another caller here, so let's go to Linda in Mandarin. Linda, your comment.
My comment is I would really like the reporters to let's go back and stay on this story. The gentleman, my understanding, that was arrested cannot be attributed to the general unhealthy population. He died with it, you know, he was there for 48 hours and it resulted in a death that, mind you, the taxpayers are going to end up paying for, not this no bid contract company. We need to follow the money. So that's what I would like the attorneys to do. And I know the tributary is on it, but we need to find out, how did a company convicted of a crime, because people who have a criminal conviction, now that's the company, can't even vote. But yes, we're giving them a $90 million no bid contract that now we're on the hook for them potentially causing the death of a man, and we're going to have to pay for this as taxpayers. So I want some internal money, no matter who it is. City Council President, Tona Pacelli, I need somebody to give up the goods on who authorized this no bid contract, because in reality, that's the reason that he's dead, is because we got on the cheap a no bid contract was given to somebody who was already convicted of a crime for killing somebody due to not administering care, and we're on the hook because we're liable for that. We knew the risk going in when we re-signed the contract, so the city is going to have to pay. So I want some heads for us, whoever in this internal government or lobbyists or whoever, I want some heads.
Okay, thank you for that. Don't forget also, it's not just one death, as has been brought up by some, the person who died, whose heart was donated. That is another death. That gift of life never got fulfilled. So that's two people dead. Everybody here is wanting to jump in, so I'm just going to pick Jack at random here.
Couple points in the last caller's comments. Follow the money, follow the politics. This company, Armor, is founded by Jose Armas, who is very tight with Rick Scott. He is now represented by Bill Galvano. The company's lawyering up. Bill Galvano.
That's the former Senate president.
Former Senate president. So and they're all Republicans. All right. So that is what it is. But the other issue, and the lobbyists as well, in anticipation of coming on the show, I was doing some research on the Jacksonville Ordinance Code to figure out why this would have necessarily been a no-bid contract. So I'm going through the legislative history when it was modified. Was it done in 2016? Was there some sort of local legislative initiative that kind of paved the way for the no-bid contract? I don't know, but I'm still doing the research on that. Last point is Public Entities Crimes Act. Florida Statute Section 287.133 requires the company to self-report. They didn't comply with the law after the conviction in Wisconsin. Where is the state attorney's investigation?
I have a question for Andrew about that, because I noticed that Nicole reported in one of her stories that initial contract was no bid because this company piggybacked off of an existing contract with another county, and I don't understand that.
Yeah, we've been having a really hard time getting the city to fully answer our questions about the procurement here, because what happened was in 2017, we basically said we'll take the Broward County Sheriff's Office contract with them. That way we don't need to bid this out. That way we don't need to say, let's bid out this super, super expensive healthcare contract. We're going to just take Broward County's pre-existing contract with Armor and apply it to us. So we took that, and then we amended the ordinance code to change procurement process, which then said we no longer need to bid out healthcare contracts, which also doesn't really make sense, because if there's one thing that I would imagine you could bid out and get competitive bids on, it would be healthcare. That would seem like one of the things that inherently as a service that you're getting that you could actually bid out, but we exempted that to make it so that in the future we were able to no bid it for the re-up.
David,
and what's the cost
have you ever
of this?
heard of that, David? Somebody piggybacking off of another county's contract?
No, I haven't. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened before, but yeah, that seemed really striking and unusual in the reporting y'all had. And it feels like somebody was maneuvering inside to find a way to avoid going through that competitive process. So it was one choice and one choice only.
This is where you get into the conflict between the local ordinance procurement rules and the state. I think what the answer is going to be is that if you're dealing with like a state agency or something where the procurement is being provided through the state, then you can piggyback on that contract. If it's local, you can't. But so you piggyback it, you get them in the door on the no bid, right? At the first instance, then you modify the ordinance code to exempt it from being bid in the future. I think that's ultimately where the answer is going to lie, but I'm still doing the research on it.
It does seem like, to everyone's point, it's a lot of money. They bid out far lower contracts competitively. Certainly it's the kind of contract that you'd want to have people present their qualifications, do a lot of review of it. Of all the things that you think would be most competitively bid, this was not one. And so it's puzzling to say the least, troubling as well.
It's worth noting that, Armor is hardly the worst player in this space. It is not a very,
not the worst. That's
I won't say
scary.
reputable, but this is a difficult business. They're dealing with a difficult population, and they're doing it when they're trying to cut costs. And so pretty much the private prison, jail, healthcare network, and it's not that big, but they all have tons of lawsuits, and they all have tons of deaths on their watch and medical complaints. And, a lot of those lawsuits get filed and they either get settled or dismissed. There's not necessarily always a legitimate claim, but they are sued a lot, and you can competitively bid it, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that, the model works. It is a model that is designed to shave costs from a very expensive, thing. Medical care is very expensive. Prison medical care is very, very expensive.
Well, this story is not going to die here. It's going to continue on, but we have to continue on. We have to literally kick the ball to the next place. And that next place is the Jaguars have started to share their vision for a proposed stadium of the future with Duval County residents. It started this week during the first few of 14 community meetings of what the team is calling huddles. On Monday, team president Mark Lamping made a pitch for the stadium and took questions from attendees with some concern about what it might mean for the east side, which is the neighborhood just across an overpass, where there's parking for tailgating and where the community does need some help. So David, I would guess that you have attended a few of these huddles and you've heard some comments. My gut feeling is lukewarm sometimes, support for the stadium. Certainly not happy that we'd have to move the Jags someplace else. And, oh, by the way, the Jags are at Daytona's International Speedway today to discuss that as a possible venue. Hey, we'll wave the checkered flag at that one when it happens. David?
I think most of the huddle's been attended by people who are already in favor of doing the stadium deal. I don't know that there's been a lot of opposition the Jaguars have heard so far to it. I haven't been to all the huddles, but from what I've heard, and went to the first one, and that was definitely the tenor of it. And as far as the out east neighborhood, I mean, the big issue has always been there's a sports complex where you have huge amounts of private and public money going in. Then you have this physical barrier, which is the road that goes to the Matthews Bridge. And on the other side, you have one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Whether this stadium will somehow sort of overcome that physical barrier, I'm skeptical. I've been really heard a lot that's being done to incorporate out east into the overall development plan, other than the Jaguars have contributed to some of those projects there. But as far as a real big, huge, transformative project, I haven't heard that yet.
It just seems logical. You're already tailgating down A. Philip Randolph. It's literally within footsteps of the stadium. If the Jags, as I presume, are going to start taking over some of their expanding properties, some of their parking lots, why not put some kind of historic A. Philip Randolph village with places to go and places to eat that supports all the things that are happening on the other side of the Matthews Expressway?
Have you heard any talk about removing that bridge to open up? Just kidding.
I think that would be a killer bad move. But
no, nothing like that, Ann. And you know, there's A. Philip Randolph Boulevard goes from the stadium complex all the way up into the out east neighborhood. So yeah, that would be the thing. You know, you have a case where you go to the game and then you go to A. Philip Randolph on the other side of the physical barrier for your dinner and your lunch and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's happened yet, and I'm not sure I've seen anything really in the plan so far that shows how that would change.
That's interesting because I've been up through that area, and it's really kind of, Dan, you're from New York. It's kind of got that gritty industrial feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of potential up in that neighborhood.
And there's a lot of empty spots there, unfortunately, where they've started doing some tailgating, parking. But there's certainly some buildings, some historic, pretty buildings that could be used. In fact, Representative Angie Nixon, I believe, had an ice cream shop in that area for a while. Maybe it's still there. So there's been attempts to develop. I believe the former owners of the Jaguars have a nonprofit facility somewhere there as well. That said, the times I've been there have been for shootings, including a shooting where people were coming back from a game and got shot at as they were going to their cars. So I really believe that's the neighborhood next to this development that should and could be, as Andrew says, a great place. And as Jack says, a great place just to hang out after or before the game, along with whatever is developed in Lot J or whatever else.
I mean, it's interesting because it sounds more like their interest is not so much in, developing in that A. Philip Randolph area, but in creating an entirely new residential mixed-use development surrounding the stadium. And, I think that is something obviously will be vetted as we start to get into the true negotiations. And I think it's important that, we're going to be bringing in the incoming mayor, so she's going to be bringing in this negotiation team, which I think is pretty key. But the question of the necessity of that development that they're talking about, the memorandum of understanding says it's, needed for this faculty and staff influx that's going to be coming to this University of Florida campus, and that necessitates this development. And then it also says, but absent that, like if that doesn't happen, this development's still needed. And it's not really explained why that would be the case. I mean, in my experience, people who are going to graduate school don't typically move on campus. It's usually people have their own place and they commute, or, to the extent that they even need to commute anymore. A lot of these classes are remote. From UF, a lot of them are going to be remote. So I'm not sure what need they're feeding other than just sort of this original vision that we had for Lot J to build a entertainment and kind of mixed use district.
We've got a caller here, Tom from the West Side. Tom, apparently you have a comment about the stadium and its future.
Yes, I do. And good morning to you all. My comment is this is not really good for the city. Let's start with the budget which Jacksonville can't afford it. It's going to crowd out the city budget and make funding for just about everything other than JSO extremely difficult. The 2-year hiatus, that is worrisome, especially when you combine it to the fact that they're not taking the needs of our college users into account, and they're going to shrink the stadium. We may wind up losing both the Florida-Georgia game and the Gator Bowl because of this. And that is an impact to the city we don't want to consider either.
I thank you for that. Yeah, there has been discussion, obviously, that when you have a college bowl game, up to 80,000 people because of supplemental bleachers can be fitted in there. Now, apparently, with all of the entertainment venues that are going to be set up in the new proposal, it's down to 70 or maybe less thousand people. So that could hurt. But again, we have yet to see anything other than a CGI animated aerial of what this could look like. And reality is not what computer graphics show.
AI.
So, let's not even talk about AI.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting that Mayor-elect Deegan said earlier this week was when asked questions about this, and both she and Shad Khan have both said, we'll leave it to negotiations to go into much detail. But one of the notes that she pointed out was we still have historic neighborhoods that need a lot of investment. And so it seems like that's part of the balance and part of the calculus that the city's going to be holding into this. When you're talking about a $1.4 billion investment here, and you're saying, well, maybe there will be spillover effects that also help East Side. I think $700 million in out East directly would be much more impactful than whatever spillover effects. And so, being clear about how much the city is spending and that is spending, that means the city cannot directly spend in those neighborhoods. And is 700 versus 600 million, going to be worth whatever extra spillover effects? If that meant you had an extra 100 million you could pour directly into out East and the East Side.
Well, for what it's worth, we have many more huddles coming up, and it looks like they've pretty much targeted some neighborhoods where they might have some vocal comments, pro or con. We've got another caller here, Duran from the West Side. Any comment that you have, sir?
Yes, my question is, I'm wondering if anyone has done an analysis to evaluate the cost of construction from ground up. 1.4 billion is, I think, a little bit around the price of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium that was built in 2017 in Atlanta and has a roof that is that can be moved, that's movable. So I'm just, and I know costs have gone up in the last few years, but to just do a new roof and some other renovations, has anyone looked at just starting from ground up?
I thank you for that. My question would be, are any of the bones of what we have there going to stay put in this renovation, or is this a ground up?
Yeah, it's going to be largely ground up. I think the figures I've seen is around 1.9 billion to 2.1 billion. The Jaguars had that in some document. And then Mark Lamping, the president of the Jaguars, has talked about it being well above 2 billion to build a new stadium. But who knows? I mean, that's part of what I think the city would want to really look at and vet, not just the legal aspects of a contract, but do their own cost estimates for what would it cost to build a new stadium? What would it cost to renovate a stadium that doesn't have perhaps as much of the features that are, maybe it's not as eye-catching, but it's still functional and provides those needs. So there's somebody out there who's got an independent expertise in that and can really look at those costs and, what's the menu of options you really have before you.
And I think the other thing with the cost is we're looking across the league and across professional sports, and it is very, 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 very rare for a city to be tasked with putting up front this much cost. Oftentimes you get the state is putting in some cost, you're getting some regional cost share, and instead we're being told that doesn't matter if the fans live in Ponte Vedra, they don't have to pay anything for this. We're going to put this on the citizens of Jacksonville. Or maybe there'll be a special taxing district which will also tax the citizens of Jacksonville and whatever else on top of the extra that the citizens are putting in.
Yes. Let's take one more quick phone call before we move on. We've got Ian from the South Side. Ian?
Hi, yes. Good to be on. Sad we lost Melissa. Anyway, we're going to lose the seating in that stadium, and the Jags are going to get the profits from less seats, because the ticket prices are going to go up. Not to mention that we're going to be paying for this. But then, who's to say we give them $1 billion and then they go in 5 years, we want to go to London. See ya. We get stuck with the bill. I think they should be stuck here for 50 or 60 years if they get all this money from us, which really needs to be negotiated. Then there's the cost of the stadium, period. I think maybe we go 50-50 on the stadium, but we don't give them a dime for the development outside. Because if Shad Khan wanted to do it, he would have done it like he did the Four Seasons. Granted, we're giving him a little bit of help there. But if he wanted to actually do it, then he could have done it because he's got the money to do it. We shouldn't be footing the bill for the profits he's going to make off of us. Then there's the UF shadiness. Shad Khan shouldn't be meddling with trying to get UF to the fairgrounds. If UF picks out East, sure, but that's their decision, with my thoughts on that aside. But he shouldn't be meddling with this. And this reeks. It seems shady to me. Which, to my last point, I think this is boxing Donna Deegan in because it might be a lose-lose situation.
Well, talking about Donna, we've got to move on to that. So thank you for your comments, Ian. And that is our last media roundtable discussion here. Is Mayor-elect Donna Deegan this week announced some key appointments, including, of course, the person who used to sit in this seat, Melissa Ross, who hosted the show for 14 years and who I listened to for all those years. Jack, you were president of the city council alongside Mayor John Payton. What are you thinking about as to the people that stood behind Donna earlier this week?
I thought the optics were very, very strong. I think, although, Dan, you and I were speaking before we went on air, there were some critiques out there. She lied, blah, blah, blah. No, I think in assembling her team, I think she did what she committed to do. That is, be inclusive, be thinking outside the box. Okay, good stuff. A lot of questions, though, as to where it goes from here. I mean, okay, first off, I love the Bob Rhodes appointment as coming in interim general counsel. I think that's great. I wish he would hang around for 2 or 3 years because he's a good lawyer. He's a good man. He's a good fit for the interim role, if not longer. I think that Mike Weinstein coming in as interim CFO, strong move. I think there are other new slots on the org chart that are going to have to be funded by the council. And there's going to have to be some rigorous debate as to what the functionality, what the roles are of these new positions. And what that said, there's going to have to be a lot of discussion and interaction with the city council as we move through a very shortened, accelerated budget process, which is good as Weinstein's there. But what I thought was kind of strangely missing was a director of intergovernmental affairs or whatever they want to give the title to, i.e., council liaison. So I think that's something that I hope they're looking into because, again, going to have to work with 19 of those city council members. And, wow, as I told John Payton years ago, I said, I don't envy you, my friend. So it's tough.
One of my favorite examples, and I've been bringing this up with friends a lot lately, for like what you need in a city council liaison is looking at Allie Corman Shelton was Mayor Curry's city council liaison, and now she's a marriage and family counselor. She's a therapist, and I'm like, that's kind of what you need in a liaison is someone who can be a therapist to the 19 members of city council and help them feel heard, help them feel seen, make sure that you're doing, many of the Gottman method principles in marriage counseling are really applicable, I think, in the relationship between the mayor and each of the 19.
So you need
members.
a couple sofa.
Don't say never. Don't say always.
You need a couple sofa. You need a box of tissues.
You need
some peppermints.
I statements, not you statements.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Andrew, I think you may have something there. Obviously, and let's not even forget, any transition like this, you're going to see heads of other departments maybe not want to stay or asked not to stay. So we do face over the next 6 months changes that are not part of this team, but could be part of the fact that, I don't like, or I do like, or I'd rather move to that department. We do have some shakeups coming. And this city right now, as Donna herself said, we need potholes fixed. The sheriff has asked for 80 more officers funding, not the 200 initially, I think, but at least 80. There are needs that we have to meet. And let's see what happens this summer if and when some storms come,
I mean, she's
and
gonna
what
have-
other infrastructure needs we have.
She's going to have to make some tough staffing decisions still, about who she keeps and who she doesn't. But I thought that her rollout was pretty interesting. I thought that, it showed a lot of diversity. I think the fact, there's been some previous administrations, not just this one, but prior to, accused of having less, perhaps, than the needed passion for this city, for this job, kind of the interest in it. And I think, she picked people, as she said, this is not something you get into because you want to be a shrinking violet. She's picked some very strong, often strident, voices in the community. And I think that really speaks to the fact that, whether or not it's about, I don't think it's about antagonizing anybody. I think it's about the fact that she wants people who really are passionate, who really want to see, we'll see how it all rolls out. But I mean, she's got people that are obviously not afraid to take a fight.
And her transition team were certainly some heavy hitters. I mean, former sheriffs, former mayors, state attorneys, really some heavy hitters in there to guide her towards these choices.
But bipartisan and,
Yes.
I think, again, kind of a mixed group of people.
And I think you raised a great point, and I don't know if I've heard someone quite put it like that, but that's a really interesting, when you look at this team, there are a lot of strong personalized people who are willing to speak out. People are willing to be in the midst of controversy and fight for what they think is right. And I do think we were talking before air, like Parvez Ahmed as director of DEI.
The fact there is a DEI, right?
Yeah. I mean, both creating that position is, I think, a strident, a bold stance in itself. And then also for Dr. Ahmed, who has been through a really tough time in the city himself when Mayor Payton appointed him to the Human Rights Commission, came under a lot of national attention from some anti-Muslim groups and the firestorm around that.
And our own city council.
Yeah. So, I think there's a strong redemptive arc there, though. I'll let
let me
Jack
throw
wants
the journalist
jump
point
in.
here. The journalist point, as a reporter here for 40 years, to know so many of these people as a journalist and know that they've always been willing to talk is good for the journalists at this table, because hopefully we will have someone to talk to and get answers to questions that...
Melissa, if you're listening, please.
That's not... I wasn't implying that, but it's nice to know Melissa Ross, but it's nice to know Parvez. It's nice to know the assistant chief, retired assistant chief. These are people who are not shy about talking and responding to questions. Jack.
After, and to your point, and after the whole Parvez Ahmed dust up, whatever you want to call it, it was I was contacted by Harvard University, and they came down to Jacksonville and they conducted a Harvard diversity study as to what occurred. It's really fascinating reading. It's about a 50-page document, and it really dug through the politics and the racial and the religious and all the other issues. But that said, going back to your point, is that Donna Deegan has appointed people who have been in the crucible before. And, that's why I was talking about where is the council liaison, because, again, as you get these people before the council, you never know what you never know where they're going to go, where the cats are all going to run. So I just bring it back to that.
With 3 minutes left.
I'd say they've been in the crucible. They haven't necessarily all been in the government crucible.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of campaign staffers who she brought over to her inner circle. There's some people with government experience. And so that's a question. I mean, to govern is to choose, and it's different from a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
The rules of engagement are different with the public and the media. Certainly with the city council, that's going to be, I agree, that's going to be a big pick in terms of that liaison. I will say it's interesting, Donna Deegan made history as the first woman elected mayor, and she will have 3 women in the 3 most powerful positions: Chief of Staff Pat McCullough, Chief Administrative Officer Karen Bowling, and also the Chief Financial Officer Anna Brochet. So it's an interesting history-making set of appointments she's making as well.
And you young'uns forget Karen Bowling was a TV anchor back in the dark ages. So that's another former journalist who is now part of our city government. In the time remaining, what's the first month going to be like? July 1st, Donna Deegan becomes mayor. What do you expect is going to be the big things happening in that first month of the new administration?
Budget.
I think it's going to be quiet. I think they're going to be huddled on the 4th floor working on the budget.
Any other thoughts?
I think we're going to have a storm.
No, and don't speak that into
You mean
existence.
to test? You mean
No.
to test the Deegan administration with wind and rain?
Or is this to test the other Deegan?
Deegan v. Deegan. That's funny.
Well, she made a joke when she spoke. I was there at her party. She made a joke about it was pouring rain minutes before she spoke, and she'd made a joke about her husband and his skills as a forecaster.
Yeah.
Because we actually literally had to move inside and then outside finally when it stopped raining.
All I know is that he's getting heat at our station for his wife poaching Melissa Ross, which I think is everybody's loss in this community. I just want to say that she is going to be hugely missed. And,
Yes, I agree, because I've been working with her.
I know.
I worked with her when she was over at your place, and I was doing stuff over at your place at First Coast News. She was a PR person for a while, and I was working with stuff. So, hey, all right, it is finally time to wrap this one up, and it is time for our lightning round. All right, I've got a quickie here. The final Father's Day Corvette show is at World Golf Village this weekend. I say final because World Golf Village is going to go into other directions, and the Corvette clubs will have to move. So Saturday, go hang out with your kids and take a look at cars you wish you could own. Corvettes wrapping around that lake. Anybody else? Lightning round.
Juneteenth weekend, there's a lot of events going on in the city, including the Melanin Market this weekend. And so there's a lot to get out and, for young parents like me who have kids to bring your kids to.
So the governor took the state budget and didn't veto very much of it all. And so one of the ones that got through is OSearch, which is this white shark tracking nonprofit, will be setting up some base in Mayport. So you can go get some shrimp in Mayport, and you can also go learn about sharks that eat the shrimp. And it should be a pretty interesting combination there in the fishing village.
Shout out to outgoing administration Mayor Lenny Curry, able to get that $75 million for UF through the state budget as well. So congratulations. Wherever it goes, whether it's Springfield, whether it's over here, wherever it goes.
And the fire stations, I think, too, that they were able to get through.
Good deal.
Well, I just got a new dog from the Humane Society, and so I'll encourage everybody to go and find a new little companion
what's the
this
dog's
weekend.
name?
Ciccolini.
Ciccolini.
Chick for short, right? Chick?
No.
Chico. It's
Chico.
like after a character in Duck Soup, so Chico.
Okay. All right. That was the lightning round. The Florida Roundup is what we're going to have here at noon. We'll discuss former President Donald Trump's visit to Miami and how the scenes outside the courtroom highlight the clash between his supporters and Governor Ron DeSantis, plus an effort to get abortion rights on the 2024 ballot gains traction across the state, and a closer look at the rise of anti-abortion pregnancy centers. Our medical show on this week's What's Health Got to Do with It? We'll take a closer look at some of the mental health issues facing men. That's tomorrow afternoon at 4 and Sunday night at 9. Thank you.
This week on Science Friday, cutting back on expensive eggs, the avian flu is cutting its way through bird flocks, leaving millions dead, and the worst outbreak the U.S. has ever seen. So what changed, and what should we be concerned about? Plus, it turns out that curly hair may actually keep you cooler than straight hair. We'll tell you why on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Donald Trump pleads not guilty to 37 federal felonies. In the aftermath, the former president's campaign war chest has grown, but his rivals have sharpened their attacks.
He hasn't won a damn thing since 2016. Loser, loser, loser.
Also on the roundup, why Garth Brooks is forced to defend the choice of beer in his new bar. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And welcome back. We've got the Jacksonville Gospel Chorale. They'll be performing tomorrow at the beautiful St. John's Cathedral, but we've got members of them right here, and that special performance is in honor of their first anniversary together and, of course, the Juneteenth holiday, which we are honoring on Monday. So Cedric Williams, the chorale's director, is here now along with several of the members. So, Cedric, talk to me about how you got to go to a beautiful cathedral downtown and sing.
Well, everything got started last year. We had been invited to do a program for Absalom Jones, and as a group of singers came together, and then afterwards, I approached the dean and I asked her, I said, is anything going on for Juneteenth? She said, not as of just yet. And I said, well, could we possibly do the St. Cyprian Mass? We talked for a moment, and we made a time, set a time to meet. we met, and that's how we got started. Our first performance was Juneteenth. That was, I guess you would say, coming back now would be our anniversary. That was the first time we ever came together, and I made some phone calls, found some folk I had ministered with from past years, and we came together. We met for about 9 weeks, and we performed, and that was our first concert.
So, my next question was going to be, how did you form? So these are men and women who you knew, you'd worked with, you'd sung with?
Yes, I came to Jacksonville in 2000 to come to work for the AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, and have been here since 2000, have played for a number of churches, have met a number of people, and thank God I had a following, and when I made some phone calls, they showed up, and that's how we got going.
All right. Now, what are we going to hear from these fine people?
This is one of the songs that we're doing for the concert tomorrow. The title of the song is Hallelujah by Frank A. Nelson. This concert is a little bit different from last year. We did the St. Cyprian Mass, more of an academic work, if you will. It was a gospel work, a mass set to gospel music, if you will. And this year is going to be more like a praise and worship session, if you will, and some interactive singing with the congregation. But the song that we're going to sing today, that we're going to share with you, is Hallelujah by Frank A. Nelson.
So you want the congregation to join in?
Yes, I want the congregation to do some things. Last year, we love singing, but I always like to find a time to incorporate the congregation. I was taught that the human voice is the only instrument that God made, and I love to sing, and I love to hear people sing.
It's a beautiful noise.
Yes.
But maybe
absolutely.
It's a noise.
It's a form noise, if you will.
I mean, I sing to rock and roll in the car sometimes, and maybe some country, but I don't know if you want to hear me singing out loud in that beautiful vaulted chamber.
Yeah, I'm a church boy, and was raised singing in the church, and I love harmony. In fact, I don't really have a picture in my mind of heaven without harmony. So
interesting to say that. Yes. So the choir invisibule, as we might say.
Yeah.
How long is this song? Because I want to try to back time into it and let them wrap up the show.
I think the song probably would be right at maybe 2.5 minutes or so.
Okay, so let's just talk just for another minute or two here. Music is vitally important, and I know that we had guests on yesterday who, as part of the Juneteenth bus trip around the state, will be in Gainesville on Monday, and they'll be doing some gospel music at a church there. Obviously, Black history, slave history, music is maybe the only thing that you could look forward to, and now it is a form of prayer. It's a form of expression.
Yes,
it's a form of conversation.
Yes. Absolutely.
So
it's a release. It's a release.
And what do you hope tomorrow? Do you hope that dozens of people show up in this beautiful church to join?
I'm
fellowship?
hoping to have a wonderful turnout. Last year was a great turnout, and we always have a wonderful reception afterwards. The concert is free, and we'd love to have as many people as possible. But as I said, this time around I'd like to have some audience participation. And so we've got a couple of songs that we're going to invite them to join in with us, and some wonderful musicians, and we're looking forward to having a good time.
And this is part of a scheduled church service for June 19th that the cathedral's doing?
Yes, this will be the second time we would have done it, and as I said, I considered it an anniversary concert because we officially didn't have a name as of Jacksonville Gospel Chorale until the concert last year for Juneteenth.
And if you can't make it tomorrow, where and when else are you out there?
I think our next concert would probably be closer to the fall. I think we're trying to plan a hymn festival, if you will. But on the Cathedral app, our previous concert for Christmas is there, and it's also on YouTube. And also, we have a couple of things that we've done in previous times there at the Cathedral that are all on the Cathedral app. St. John's Cathedral app.
Let me wrap this up. You guys get ready, and then I'll toss it to you and them.
Yes.
But remember, this is First Coast Connect. David Luckin is our executive producer. Our director is Isabella De Silva. Our theme music was composed and performed by Club de Belugas. Have questions or comments about First Coast Connect? Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I'm Dan Scanlon, and you're listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville Have a great weekend, and we'll be off on Monday for Juneteenth, but back on Tuesday. And now it is time for some beautiful live choral music. So take it away, Cedric.
All right.
And he's using an app on his phone.
Hallelujah, 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 Lord, we praise you. 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 You are worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy. You are
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at North